Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the porch. My name is Sierra, and I am joined by Rob Hunter and Amy Yakowski. And we are here with our weekly book club. This is a handbook for new Stoics. And we are on week 31, which is act with reservation. Ooh, this has nothing to do with reservations for dinner. This has to do with the fact that we can have good intentions, but sometimes things happen that get in the way of us doing things in the way that we thought, or perhaps the outcome or the timeline that we thought. We talk a lot about this on the porch with our own personal lives because we all live in the real world. Believe it or not, none of the three of us are perfect, and things don't always go as we plan. So when these setbacks happen, you can look at them as kind of derailing and saying like, oh, you know what, since this didn't work out in the timeline, I thought this is never going to get done, or this is ill-fated, or this sucks, or whatever. You could look at it that way, but you could also just look at it as a minor delay, as a reason to keep going. But how are you going to create a reserve clause? So this is my intention unless this happens, and then I'm going to revise the plan, right? So as you know, the Cantrells, we love us a good road trip, but we like to have a reserve clause in there, right? Like, so I think we're going to go here the next day unless it's raining. And if it's raining, then we'll leave a little later and we'll get there when we get there, right? So the Stoics, we've got a quote in here from our friend Seneca. And this quote is talking about how you're going to need a reserve clause because there's something that they talk about called fate permitting. So this is sort of an old Greek thing where the fates had something to do with it. So you don't have to believe in the fates, but modern version, stuff happens.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff happens. So this is giving you a gentle clause or a gentle reminder that your plans might not go as anticipated. And so because of that, our actions are not under our complete control.
Just like that. That wasn't under Sierra's complete control, and it just happened, and you just roll with it.
And it just happens.
Yep.
So things are not under your complete control, and you've got to have a clause, a reserve clause. So I would love to hear from you guys. What were some of the reserve clauses that you came up with that had to do with things that you wanted to get done this week? What could be a clause?
Rob, you want to go first?
Well, they give you a couple examples, so I'll just use some of these. So I'll wake up tomorrow at 6 a.m. as an example they put in this chapter. And I wrote, so long as I get to bed by 10 p.m. So the idea of getting up at 6 sounds fantastic, but at what point are you sacrificing your sleep to get it done? So what's more important? So if you had a late night project, maybe a late night meeting, or maybe you're just watching TV and you just got caught up in it. You're just enjoying that moment. You end up staying up till 11. Is it worth getting up at 6 because you might be groggy the next day? So everything doesn't go your way. And the point of this is to be ready for that. Be okay with what happens. So I'll meet you at dinner at 8 is another example. So long as my work doesn't impede is what I said. Because for me, that's a perfect example because I don't get out of work until 7. Occasionally I have to stay till maybe 7:30 to get something extra done. So if that was a night that would happen, text somebody and say, I'm going to run late, or let's do it tomorrow. You have to be ready for those circumstances so you don't overreact if something doesn't go your way. You don't emotionally fly off the handle.
Right. Or get stressed out, or say drive dangerously to get where you're trying to go because of the fact that you said, I'm going to be there at 8 o'clock. It's interesting with the reserve clause. I love the idea of the reserve clause because I think it's a great way, at least for somebody like me who sets all of us probably, who set very high expectations of what I can do or what I want to accomplish, or, how long something should take. It's a good reminder that stuff can happen, that obstacles can come in my way. I think the one key to it though is, so making sure that it doesn't become an excuse to not fulfill whatever it is that you're wanting to pursue. So they give an example in this lesson about Darnell and how Darnell is very much involved in, he's a political activist in a local way, just trying to help with certain causes. But it's saying the whole reason that we do this reserve clause is not to say, well, I tried it and it didn't work, so oh well, I guess it's not worth pursuing. It's really just separating your effort from the outcome, which we talk about a lot here on the porch. It's really saying, listen, I'm going to do the good that I feel is important, that I'm going to push out there, but also understanding that I ultimately am not going to be responsible or be the one to make the change, make the policy change or whatnot. That is reliant on other people, and those things are outside of my control. So it's creating that clause just to remind you that things might not always go exactly as you planned them. But the whole purpose of it is so that way you stay focused on what it is you're doing, not so that it gives you an out from having to do it or a way to kind of abandon it.
Because that would be virtuous if you used it as an excuse. Because the Stoics were big on virtues.
And I love that you mentioned the fate parts here, because they do talk about, obviously they used to say fate permitting, or if the good Lord allows it, or whatever you want to say. But they say that really fate is the way, as a reminder that you as an individual control less of what you think you do. That there's only so much that you as a person can control. And of course, we know that from our dichotomy of control, it's very small. It's basically us. Everybody else is outside of our control. We can influence them just like Darnell can when it comes to political changes or, policy changes. But ultimately, we are in control of the way that we behave and what we pursue. So exactly. It helps you. I highlighted this. I underlined it. It helps to avoid wishful thinking. So again, you set these really high hopes, these really high things. If I do X, Y will happen. Fate permitting. You need to add that, because if that doesn't happen, you don't want to all of a sudden have that whole balloon just get deflated. And you're like, never mind, forget it.
Right. And it doesn't mean that your cause isn't virtuous. It just, I think it's a different way of looking at obstacles in the way. So like for Darnell, they mentioned that he feels frustrated. They say if it weren't for his dedication to the issue, he would have quit by now. But he doesn't quit because he sees that these little minor things that are happening is just fate, right? Or it's just shit happens. So things have happened, but he still feels that the cause is a virtuous one. So he is going to continue to strive forward in hopes that if he continues doing his best, applies to what he finds to be virtuous, eventually this will have an impact. Is it going to go perfectly the way you think the first time? Probably not. But what does?
Right. Especially this past year. I mean, we've all been dealing with a pandemic in one way, shape, or form. There's no doubt that's probably impacted most of our plans, our lives. How did you deal with it? Did you go, okay, I can't control the fact that there's virus running around the world, getting people sick and killing people. So maybe I can't go out to eat as much. Okay. Again, that's a perfect example of what the Stoics are talking about is our way of life changed, at least for now. We don't know how long it's going to last. So with that being said, are you okay with that? In case a pandemic happens, I can't socialize as much with my friends in big groups because of the pandemic, because there's a real reason why we had some intervention, if you will.
Right. Like I think about, for me, I turned 40 this year, and I know, still recovering from it, but I turned 40, and normally what we did for Rob and what we had planned for me was we do a big trip and turn 40. But obviously that kind of got thrown out the window because of the pandemic. But having that mentality, as opposed to putting all of your eggs, if you will, in that expectation basket, and then being completely dejected when you can't do the thing you want to do, having this reserve clause is a way to accept it And also to your point with Darnell, but think about, what other things we can do instead. It also helps with that creative problem solving. I love that you said, it's basically another way to practice almost a little bit of pre-planning, some premeditatio malorum, which we've talked about before. But it's a way to prepare yourself for that. So that way, if something, you might have a cause or something that you're really pursuing that you're passionate about, and you have an idea of exactly how it's going to go, but fate permitting, it will go that way. If it doesn't, this is where you can then explore alternative options, alternative solutions to continue to move that pin forward or continue on that journey, just not exactly the same route you originally planned.
And this is what I just going to add to that. This is a way to constantly do this. So this is a way of taking a Stoic theory and putting it in your everyday life by saying, okay, everything that I do, this is the plan, unless X, Y, or Z happens. A pandemic happens. There's a traffic accident. Unless, I don't know, the restaurant we were going to go to suddenly closed down. You can think of various examples to put it in your everyday life so that it balances you out. So you don't get ahead of the skis, if you will.
Right. Well, and exactly to your point, Amy, you say it's not an excuse to not do it. Like, for example, right now we are together and talking together and socializing together, but you guys are in Arizona and I'm in Florida. So we're still doing it. We're still moving towards our virtuous path. Are we physically together? No, but we found another solution, another way to get there. So again, if it's important to you, you make it a priority. Where there's a will, there is a way. It is creating that. And again, the Stoics get a bad rap because a lot of people think Stoics have no emotion. That could not be farther from the truth, because I can tell you on the porch here, we have a lot of emotion.
And we discussed them here on the porch. Yes.
Yes. So I can speak for the three of us that we have a lot of passion, but we have to work through when things go wrong, like filming issues, microphone issues, editing issues, software. When these things happen, when the fates step in and give us a delay, we can be frustrated and throw in the towel and say, screw this, I'm not doing it. Or we can find a way to move forward. And we choose to continue to move forward.
Because it's something that we believe in. I even think back to originally, Sierra, we were creating and had a whole plan for creating your program, Radical Mindfulness. And you're going to fly out. We were going to spend like 2 weeks filming all of this. And then COVID happened. And we immediately had to pivot and think. We could have said, well, you know what? This just must be a sign. It's not meant to be right now. We should just wait on this and not do it. But rather than doing that, we exercise a variation of this and said, okay, well, you know what? No, this is still something. It's an important program. We want to get it out there. It needs to happen. How are we going to make that happen? And we found a creative way to make it happen through the beauty of Amazon.
Yes.
Yes. And actually we were actually, I think, about to book a flight on like March 16th. And March 17th, everything changed for everybody. And I'm glad we didn't book that flight, because we would have definitely been changing things.
Yep. So I think the reserve clause is it's a great way to prepare yourself for a little bit of creative solutioning down the road. It's not meant to be that excuse to say, well, it's a sign I shouldn't do this. Or even with the one about I'll wake up at 6 a.m. I wrote so long as I get sufficient sleep, but you said so long as I go to bed at 10. That doesn't mean that you can just like completely forget about going to bed at 10 and neglect that goal, right? It's just understanding that sometimes things outside of your control might prevent you from fulfilling whatever it is you want to fulfill. Yeah.
And it's a way to practice, as I said, premeditatio malorum on the daily. To plan ahead in case things do go wrong, so that you can be in control of your emotions when they inevitably pop up. Even for the Stoics, they popped up, but they tried their best to say, okay, I'm angry. Am I angry? Okay, now I'm in control of this. The faster you can do it, the better, especially with those negative emotions. And it's a whole lot easier to feel negative emotions than positive emotions because there's more of them.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah. And again, I think ultimately all of this is to say, if you have something that you're passionate about, whether it's something personal within, your family or your friends or out in the world, if you're passionate about something that you're pursuing, continue to pursue that. Continue to make a difference in the way that fills you up. However, the point here is add that reserve clause, understanding
It's not going
that
to be a straight line.
it's not going to be a straight path necessarily.
Yeah.
So recognize that whatever it is that you want to pursue, whatever that difference is that you want to make in your life, it may not go exactly as planned, but
it won't go exactly as planned.
That's true.
It never does.
That's true.
Yes. But
See,
that's what makes it worth it.
I'm still stuck on it.
Yeah.
It may happen the way I want it to happen.
Yeah. But it's overcoming those obstacles along the way that add to the fulfillment level of doing it, because you overcame for us in recording our programs, microphone issues, technological issues, Dropbox issues. When you finally get it done, it's like, man, I overcame a lot to get this done. And I created this program designed to help others. Like that's the reward part, is pushing through those obstacles, because it's so easy to give up. This is a reminder not to give up, expect that there are going to be obstacles, and keep moving.
Mm-hmm. When it's your virtue, it is worth pursuing.
Mm-hmm.
So did you guys exercise useful?
I did. I need to do it more because of the expectations that I put for myself and truly for others as well, but I think more so for myself.
So yeah, Amy, what would Amy do as an implementation intention to remind yourself of this reserve clause? What language are you going to use?
So I looked at it more from a tactical initiative, where I said, when I write out my to-dos, because I do have a daily and a weekly to-dos that I use to help me manage my day. When I basically arrange my calendar, schedule my calendar, is just purposefully, making a little mental note, or actually a physical note next to that to-do. So that way it's my intentional reminder that this might not take the time I think it's going to take. This might not get done today, or I may encounter XYZ.
Good. Okay. Rob, did you find it helpful, the exercise of the week?
I did. It takes the theory of Stoicism and puts it into something easily practicable every day. Because we make plans all the time, like Amy said with her to-do lists. You have to add that little caveat. Okay, these are my to-do lists. These are my plans this week, unless something else happens, unless fate intervenes, unless, you can come up with anything that might interrupt you. But that's why I like it. It's literally something to add to the to-do list.
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
I found it useful as well. I have an additional fate interrupter in my house in the form of a 6-year-old child. We can make some of our best plans, and then sometimes, your child has a different idea about what's important. So sometimes we have to shift, and but I found this very useful. And my implementation intention was not everything goes your way. And that was like a little mantra to say to myself, not everything goes your way. And I have a mental image of the Queen of Hearts from Alice in Wonderland saying, your way? Oh, ways around here belong to me. Everything goes your way. It's like I just take my little croquet mallet and just knock her off.
Mm-hmm.
Good strategy.
I love that. What a great visual.
All right, so join us next week, where we will be going on to week 32, practice Stoic sympathy stealthily. Ooh, stealthily sympathy. Say that 10 times fast without getting...
Stoic sympathy stealthily.
We know how much Amy loves lots of words that start all with the same letter, so this will be totally her jam. Stoic sympathy stealthily. So thank you so much for joining us. If you haven't already, please jump in with us anytime. A handbook for new Stoics, a how to thrive in a world out of your control. We'd love to have you join us on the porch. Come check out what we're all about. We have some incredible courses that help you navigate through this real world where things don't always go your way.